This is Cybersound, your simplified and fundamentals-focused source for all things cybersecurity, with your hosts, Jason Pufall, Stephen Maresca, and Matt Fusaro.
Welcome to Cybersound. I'm your host, Jason Pufall, joined by Matt Fusaro and Steve Maresca today.
Hey, everyone.
Hi. So I'm not sure we have a full-length feature podcast on this topic necessarily, but it's worth mentioning.
We'll see about that.
Somehow we always seem to get there. But so North Dakota recently passed a bill requiring mandatory computer science with some cybersecurity education. So requiring elementary school and high school students to have some computer science course, and some curriculum that would teach them about cybersecurity and the risks, right?
Notably, first state in the entire country to do so, which I didn't expect North Dakota to be the one, but good for them.
They're setting the tone.
What else they lead in? I'm not sure. Anything good?
We don't know.
But they did top tourist destination for Badlands.
That's the South Dakota, right?
Oh well, see how much I know.
Man, Steve.
Well, I guess they're finally on the map.
They're on the map. It is interesting. So we certainly, cybersecurity education, security awareness training. It's something that we do a lot, typically for companies. And there's some requirements there as a result of cyber liability insurance and some other regulations. But it's interesting to see a state push this for their student body. And let's face it, I think it makes a lot of sense for them to have a sense of what the risks are. Personally, I don't think kids are as privacy minded as they should be, and I don't think they really understand the threats that are out there.
I mean, it's not as though the notion of teaching these skills has been absent from curricula. It's just not necessarily a specific focus. I think it's regularly the case that school systems try their best to equip students with, knowledge about how to interpret information, for example. I distinctly remember discussion about Wikipedia and the risk of Wikipedia. But the same sort of thought process is attached to this, understanding whether, things in front of you are real or not, or whether they represent a risk. I think it's a good thing. The K through middle school are just required to have some sort of miscellaneous educational experience. The high schoolers are required to have actually one real credit worth of classes. I think that's good. They have to have it in order to graduate unless they have some sort of, exemption.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how they can help support this type of initiative. Back when I was in high school, we ran into this problem where the programs that we had were actually cut because the one person that was able to teach this material ended up having to teach math.
Right.
So, by the time I had gotten to that point where I was actually able to take those classes, I wasn't able to because they were cut. I can foresee a lot of school districts just not having access to people that understand this information or be able to do it.
So it makes you wonder then, the medium that they use. Is it going to be Canvas style courses, your sort of more common LMS style courses? Are they going to partner with some company that does video based security awareness training? I think it's unlikely they'll be able to bring security professionals in to teach the total of their student body.
But co-op programs and things like that are really, really common in high schools with local area colleges and things like that. It might be a really good in intersections between the folks who have that skill set or are paid to do it by colleges helping out in the actual school systems. Yeah. I imagine there's a path there.
So I think you're going to have to look at probably a couple of different maybe levels of education. I mean, you're educating your K through 5 population, K through 6, whatever. Is certainly going to be different than you're providing that curriculum to a high schooler. And I think we actually partnered with the Center for Cyber Safety and Education, which was a piece of ISC Squared for sort of people in the security space. I'm sure are familiar with that. And they had a whole program where they used Garfield to train young children, right, elementary school children, on risks on, not responding to emails from people they don't know, risks about, not sharing information over social media. I mean, I think it's commonplace now for, kids of that age to have social media. It was a great program. I think ultimately that specific program was cut, but I think as an example of the types of things that you can do with those younger audiences that you probably can't do with older audiences.
I do think there's some good content out there that is, Garfield being a cartoon, things that are accessible to younger audiences. And honestly, it's what makes sense for that type of audience as well. It's a dry subject. It has to be made more personal and more entertaining. Otherwise, it's not likely to stick.
And maybe using more updated characters.
Well, but perhaps, Garfield was available for licensing.
There you go.
Yeah, for good reason.
So on this note, I will be interested to see what North Dakota and any other jurisdictions that are pushing this come up with for curricula, what the educational assistance co-ops and so forth actually bring to bear, because it can only help. It's a void right now in the educational space.
Well, and they need something built out by January of 24?
July 2024. Yeah.
July of 24.
Yeah,
so
I think in preparation for that fall.
that would make sense.
Yeah.
So they have about a year. And putting curriculum together in that time frame is, I'm sure going to be a challenge. So I would expect, some of the vendors that currently play in this space.
Oh yeah, they'll have offerings
to benefit,
for sure.
right?
Yeah, yeah. I'd be surprised if there weren't several within the next year.
So, I think this is probably just an introduction to the idea that, there are states now that are starting to talk about more formal education.
I'm particularly interested in any states or districts that try to find people in their community that are already technically adept to bring in some of that skill set. Because, for example, maker spaces, hacker spaces, those are staff of volunteers who are enthusiastic. They often come from fields that are, education adjacent and things like that, and they can bring some tangible things to the conversation. It's probably a really worthwhile area to tap for, at the very least, people to bring in for instructors and things of that variety who are qualified.
Yeah, I think they really should work on reaching out to the community like that, because, yeah, you're right. There's lots of people to find out there.
And I think there's a lot of security professionals who would feel that that's a good place to spend their time, right? Sure. I mean, educating the younger people on real risks that, frankly, they can't understand yet, right? So it's really valuable to teach them early. I do think there's a willing population out there. Coordinating them and doing the legwork to get them involved, I'm sure it would take a little bit of effort. But, honestly, we joke a little bit at the beginning about, North Dakota leading the charge on this, but I do hope that we start to see some other states push this, because I think it really is important. It's really interesting to see it hit, and having been able to participate with Vancord in that West Haven school district, and seeing kind of the engagement of the students through a program that was tailored to their level, it was great. So I really think there's some really good potential outcomes here.
Yeah, I think it kind of drives home the fact that this type of education is just as important, especially these days, as math and science and all the other required areas that are in there. So now it's kind of almost a protected silo now, where it can't just be cut out because you don't want to pay for it, right?
Look, we've talked about this before in broad strokes. Most of cybersecurity awareness is familiarity and critical thinking skills.
Right.
They're innate to the environment that we're talking about, and anything that
usable in lots of areas. Yeah.
Anything that improves that for the younger set of kids is going to equip them more for the future that lies ahead. So,
if anybody's interested in looking more into it, House Bill number 1398, North Dakota, reasonably short. It's a quick read, gives you a sense of what they put together. We think it's a good idea. It'll be interesting to see how it actually comes together over the next year. Any questions for us, certainly feel free to reach out. Hope we answered a couple of burning questions around cybersecurity education in the K-12. And as always, we hope you got value out of this. Thanks for listening.
We'd love to hear your feedback. Feel free to get in touch at Vancord on LinkedIn or on Twitter at Vancord Security. And remember, stay vigilant, stay resilient. This has been Cybersound.